Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our conference. It's great to see you all. Hope you're suitably caffeinated. Some of you have got jet lag and so forth. So yeah, I hope we're able to keep you awake over the next 2 days as well. It's exciting. This is one of the big events for our project, the Digital British Islam project, just in case you wondered where you were. It's interesting, really. I mean, I started looking at Islam on the net in the 90s. It's incredible to think of the transformation in terms of digital mediation. Some of you, of course, won't remember this, but those of us that do, there was a pre-browser era, static beige boxes, very big things, and we had to go to special labs to use computers. None of this stuff that's in your pocket, running on very slow internet speeds. So, I mean, to see the transformation now through to always-on mobile access and networking and interaction is incredible. So charting these transformations and the transformations that continue to occur in a relatively compressed period has been a really interesting phase to follow. And of course, there's been this massive shift in authority, communication, and religious knowledge transmission in what I describe as cyber Islamic environments. And it's been underrepresented in academic discourse and research. I know a lot of you are engaged in it now, which is fantastic, but it's been underrepresented in the UK context. And that's something that this conference and the Digital British Islam, DBI, we'll call it, project seeks to address through our detailed and hopefully innovative research with our diverse methodologies, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes, and different academic approaches to the subject. I mean, it really was, where do we start, I think, in a lot of these investigations. But we've tried to build on the complexities and diversities within digital Islam, using multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary approaches. And for this particular project, we're focused on core themes of religious authority, gender, and political agency, but it doesn't mean we've ignored everything else, not least the online responses to the Gaza tragedy. But those are our three principal focal points. The project itself is funded by the Economic and Social Research Council. We started work in 2022. It's a collaboration. Some people say collaborations don't work. I think this one has. Between UWTSD, that's the University of Wales, Trinity St David, Coventry University and Edinburgh University. So the three of us have all worked together, and we've been working on surveys, participant diaries, digital archives, data visualization, interviews, and we've had community-facing workshops as well. And we're going to be presenting our initial findings across the 2 days of this conference. This event and the project wouldn't be possible without the support and organisational genius of the team. You'll be meeting all the team later on. So that's Frederick, Saria, Sadiq, Almgir, Laura and Khadija, Dan, who is elsewhere. And we acknowledge the support from the colleagues across the partner universities in pulling all of this together, in particular the logistical contributions required for an event of this nature. And we'd like to welcome all the presenters, the chairs, the observers, to what we hope is a varied programme of digitally relevant themes across diverse forms of online expression. And looking at the programme, I think it's a real challenge to try and determine which sessions to sit in on as well, and try and work that out. But anyway, across the 2 days, we'll be having discussions on digital influence as well. And what I think is just as important as all the presentations is the opportunities to network with people who are doing similar stuff to yourself. Especially if you're in an isolated position. You might be the only person doing digital Islam related topics in your university or institution. So this is a great chance for you to meet with other people who are doing similarly inspiring, challenging, / crazy, whatever you want to describe it as, themes and subjects as well. So it's a great chance for you to do some networking. So whatever your interest, we hope that the event will stimulate further investigation into multiple aspects of digital Islam across diversities and methodologies. Do let us know your thoughts about this field throughout the event and afterwards if you want to contact us as well. Please post about the event. Despite feelings about Elon Musk, we are using the hashtag, you'll see it in the handbook, hashtag DBI Conf, C-O-N-F 2025. It also works on Blue Sky, anybody using that as well. So do tweet. Be cautious about taking photographs of colleagues without permission and posting them online. So do ask if you're taking pictures of individuals. But otherwise, we hope that you enjoy the event. And I'm going to hand over now to Saria.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you very much. So I am Saria Chiruvalil, contractor. I'm one of the co-investigators on the project, but I am also professor in the sociology of Islam here at Coventry University. So I'm going to leave the DBI hat aside for like 5 minutes and put the Coventry hat or hijab back on. So Coventry University, it's my home. I'm going to say it's a pretty amazing, place, but I'm biased. Thankfully, we haven't lost anybody on our iconic ring road yet, although they might, crop in a little later, after, being lost for like half an hour. But Coventry is an iconic city. It was bombed to dust by Hitler. The Luftwaffe bombed it. Some people say Churchill was involved. They didn't want to, let out that they'd broken the code, if you've seen the movie. And so they let Coventry burn. But what happened was Coventry has emerged resilient and strong. We are home to 2 universities, and I know we've got colleagues from Warwick here. But what has characterized Coventry is that we've become a city of peace and reconciliation. When the cathedral was bombed, we had Reverend John Howard, Provost John Howard, who was the dean of the cathedral at the time. And don't worry, I'm coming to the point. He did say, and everybody was really, really angry. It was on the radio, Coventry's been bombed. And he said, no, we must forgive. And he was very unpopular. And there were lots of hate messages on the radio and in the press. Coventry is mad. John Howard is a bit mad. He's saying we should forgive the Germans. And then this happened in November. A month later, it was Christmas. The radio, BBC, decided, let's be provocative and let's get John Howard. A month and a bit later, because the bombing happened on the 14th of November, on the radio. And what did the poor man say? We must forgive the Germans, or whoever. I hope there are no Germans in the room. Okay, good. Oh my gosh. And again, there was all of this, John Howard is mad, the Coventrians are mad. But it wasn't anything like what we have today, because there was no digital, I told you I'm coming to the point. There was no digital technology. So he reacted on the 15th of November. He then reacted again on the 24th, I think, or the 23rd of December in his Christmas address on radio. But there was still a comment, an action and reaction, but at a completely different speed to what we have today. Digital technologies have transformed our lives. Coventry, after John Howard, became the city of peace and reconciliation, something that we are very proud of. We still host arms companies in our city, so it's a bit of a thing to think about. But we're also a city of resilience. Digital technologies and societal resilience are 2 of the themes that Coventry University wants to be researching, our strategy for 2030 and all of that jazz. And this project sits squarely in that space. We're very honored to be part of this project. We're very honored and grateful that all of you are here to share what me and Gary and Khadija and Sadiq and Alamgir and Laura and others have done with us. So thank you very much for your time. We'll talk about our project findings, and we're really excited about hearing your findings over the course of these 2 days. Housekeeping, I think I should say a few things. The loos here And, trust our luck, broken. So we've got to go down to the first floor, and there are loads of floors there. So you go down and follow the signs for the conference center. Lunch is served downstairs. We will show you the way through the stairs that are literally that way opposite our door. What else do I have to say? No fire alarm scheduled. So if there is one, we have to orderly go downstairs through those stairs. Anything else? Prayer facilities. They have given us a prayer room, but unfortunately there's a big table in its midst. So we're going to use our second room, 2.6, for prayer facilities. We'll have to move chairs and put them back. And our brilliant Muslim chaplain from Coventry University, Siraz Al-Alam, is going to lead us through prayers. There is a trip to the cathedral if anybody wants to. So the iconic Bond Cathedral and then our fancy new one. I'll take you around. And what Siraz says, if we want to, I can show you where our faith center is. But that's really it from me. Welcome again to Coventry. Welcome again to our DBI project. And I think we go straight into plenary presentation. So I'll hand over to Hafsa, Dr. Hafsa Iqbal, our chair. Thanks, Hafsa.
Okay, good morning everyone, Assalamu alaikum. So this is the first plenary. We're going straight into it. Digital British Islam, which has already been sort of introduced by our colleagues in the project team. But we're going to be looking at kind of concepts and methods of the project itself now. So we're going to start with Professor Gary Bunt, who's going to be speaking first on, as I say, concepts, and then of the project overall, and then handing over to Professor Saria, who you've just heard from. I'm sure you're not sort of tired too much yet. We've got a lot more to say. And then over to Dr. Alamgir also, and then Dr. Laura Jones. So everyone's going to have 20 to 15 minutes to speak, and then we're going to have a 20-minute Q&A. And please excuse the irony in the tech and me not being the best of friends. So if I get stumbled, then please forgive me. Yeah? And so I will hand it over first and foremost to Professor Gary Bunt. Thank you so much.
We'll see what happens. Yeah, it's always ironic when you're doing something digital about computers. 9 times out of 10, the equipment does something strange, and I'm quite often under the desk plugging things in or trying to get software to work. So we'll see what happens when I press this button. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the background to the project, really to set it up for my colleagues, so you know what we're doing in terms of our overall research strategy and so on. Oh, look, it works. Amazing. Sorry, we'll come back and talk about methodological things, and then Alamgir is going to talk about diaries, and then Laura will talk about archive methodologies. So roughly that's what we're going to be doing over the next few minutes. Let me tell you first, a word from our sponsors. We have to mention that we're a collaboration, as I said earlier, and this is part of a ESRC-funded project. It concludes, we've stretched it out a bit, it concludes in July of this year. We were saying earlier to people that it's really gone quickly. I mean, what's happened with the time? We just don't know. But anyway, we're gradually getting towards the end of the project, and it's been challenging, it's been a lot of fun, and hopefully we've got some interesting results at the end of it, some of which you'll see today. It's all about cyber Islam and the impact of what we call cyber Islamic environments on UK Muslim communities. I must admit, now when we were coming together with this project, it started on the back of an envelope and it sort of expanded outwards. But these were like the key themes that I think we all wanted to address. We had lots of meetings going through the bid and trying to formulate different strategies and approaches, which was a challenge as well. But we thought we really wanted to see what, because there wasn't a great deal of literature out there, we wanted to find out what the impact was on Muslim lives, on societies, on practices and beliefs in terms of the digital. Because there's a lot of talk about digital influence and impact and cyber Islamic impacts in different ways, but we haven't really got anything ground down that we could look at, that we could have as a starting point for analysis. We're not saying this is the final word on it. We're hoping it's the starting point, because we want to encourage lots of other people to work in associated fields as well. But you've got to start somewhere. So this is where we started. And it's been a real, well, for me, it's been a learning curve. It's very different from the work that I've done previously. I've written about different aspects of cyber Islam for 20 plus, 30 plus years maybe. But it's very different to what I've done before, which is very independent. I'm having to work with a team, which is interesting and a challenge and all of that stuff as well. But we really wanted to see what we could do, see what we could find out. And in a way, it's an extension of the study of Islam in Britain as well, the longer standing studies. But this is taking it into the digital context as well to find out, let's see what happens. So our team, I've mentioned the team already. So we don't really need to go through that now, but there's a team of 7 doing different aspects. So everybody's going to be explaining what we're doing over the next few days. Dan is also in the building. He'll be talking as well. Cyber Islamic environments, that's the term that we've used. I mean, there could be other terms that we applied, but this is a long-standing term that I find is an umbrella term that is useful. It's evolved since I first brought it out in the 2000s, and it's shifted a great deal, but it brings in lots of different ideas about Islam online. And I mentioned the way in which technology shifts over time, and we're using different devices, but also the different ways in which things like Islamic expression have manifested themselves online over the years. From text only, if you can imagine pre-browser, some of you, text-only information, through to the latest apps that many people are using every day. That's quite a transition. So it's been very interesting to see the way in which those different expressions have evolved over time, and the way in which leaders, authorities have taken on board or not technology. There have been some people who tried to ignore it, I remember, early on, and others who really adapted, digital natives who were able to apply apps and other technologies in order to really make the most of the technologies within these CIEs. So we've seen new forms of networking over the decades as well, and different ways in which diversity has been expressed online. So, and that's very interesting, the way in which micro areas of Islamic expression have found a space on the internet. And then you've got the issues of ways in which sources are being mediated, the innovative ways in which the Quran, for example, has been presented online, the way in which it's become more searchable in some ways, different recitations and so on, and the way in which cyber Islam or digital Islam sees different forms of activism and politics as part of that framework as well. So we wanted to try and capture some of this within our project as well, looking at the different interfaces. As I say, there's been a great evolution. We haven't focused so much on social media within our project. A lot of it is more web-based, certainly for the archiving side, and that's more for ethical reasons. We have looked at social media, and we'd like to see what's going on there, but we haven't captured it in the same way. But we have looked at other forms of online interaction, not so much on artificial intelligence at the moment, but it is mentioned within our discussions. The cyber Islamic environments themselves have evolved over time with the different platforms and technologies that all form part of that picture and interaction across platforms. So we picked our 3 themes, some of it based on the interests of our project team. but also in terms of priorities as well. We thought that the way in which religious authority is presenting itself online was very significant, and we really wanted to represent that. We thought gender was very significant as well, and often underrepresented within studies, so we wanted to ensure that there was a good analysis in terms of online spaces and gender. And political agency is another theme, again drawing on our team's specialisations that we wanted to apply within the project. So in terms of the methodology itself, it was about mapping. So we had to figure out what kind of cyber Islamic environments are out there in terms of the UK context. So we had to draw up lists of who we were going to analyse in some cases. Laura will be talking more about that in terms of how we came to archive some of this content. And then there was the interpretation that we wanted to do. For example, commentaries on some of the archives, develop understandings, and then provide some forms of analysis as well. For example, some of the analyses that you'll see coming out of the surveys that we have run has been really thought-provoking and interesting in terms of cyber Islam, or digital British Islam. So some of the methodologies, for example, the archiving, we had to develop almost from scratch, which has been interesting as well. Well, we have co-produced methodologies. We've looked at identifying and cataloguing different CIEs in terms of conversations and content. We've tried to map the everyday lived experiences digitally, for example, through the diary methods, or for diverse Muslims. And then we've tried to produce, well, we are producing open access content and sustainable research content and publications as well. So those are sort of the critical research objectives that we've tried to bring in. So we have an archive. Anybody looked at the archive already or seen any of our archive? One or two people already looked at it, great. Yeah, we have a curated archive, open source archive for cyber Islam in relation to the UK. We are developing a teaching resource. We have some information which we hope will be useful to stakeholders in terms of digital strategies, and we've also some ideas in relation to community strategies as well. So the methodological approaches which colleagues will be unpacking, we have the digital archiving, the preservation of online content, because a lot of material appears and disappears quite frequently. You can lose a lot, so we wanted to capture it during the time of our project. We've had focus group discussions. We've had a really interesting range of interviews and transcripts that have come out. I'm excited to get those out to people. We've had diaries as well, where people have written about what they do online within certain parameters, and survey. That should be plural now because we introduced the second survey in relation to the Gaza crisis. So, I mean, that's some of the methodological approaches that we have been adopting during this project. And that's in order to sort of bring down these different aspects, digital inputs and practice and authority as well. So we hope that the beneficiaries of some of this will include Muslim organisations, because we're keen to see how they respond to our research and what they feel about the ways in which online Islam is manifest. Policymakers might find this useful as well, third sector and academia as well, but we felt it's really important that we have an impact that works with communities, not just something that's going to sit on a shelf somewhere in terms of academic output. And again, these are some of the things that we're looking at in terms of our overall impact. So, just to highlight some of the outputs that colleagues might have done. Okay, yeah. So some of the things that we have also done during the duration of this project is we have put out positioned mini papers on different aspects of online activities. You'll find those on our website, digitalbritishislam.com. For example, we've had discussions about different aspects of the archive. We've introduced every sector of the archive, as Laura will talk about later on. So there are descriptors. The archive is curated as well. And we've addressed specific issues and concerns as we've gone through. So where there's been interesting topics, we've tried to bring them out in our discussions, drawing on the expertise of our team in order to do that. So different things, we did something on the elections, we've written, of course, about methodology, but also things like lifestyle, relationships, how they work online in terms of kind of exploring the online relationship business, I suppose, which is a major sector that has emerged. Looking at finance, other ideas about religious authority as well. So we do have quite a good range of papers and discussions already. This is outside of the proposed book that we are also planning as well. We have a monograph that's in a stage of production, early stage of production, and we also have some journal papers as well and other conference activities that we do. If you want to track more about what we do, as I say, we are on Twitter, we're on Facebook. The website is the best place to go in terms of most up-to-date information as well. You can find us through all of those channels if you wish. And yeah, I'm hoping that you'll find that this is it's a complicated area of studies, but it's very interesting. I hope it will encourage more people to work within this field as well. And in terms of generating a stimulus, I hope the Digital British Islam project is like a first step towards more detailed academic analysis in the future. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Me now with my ESRC DBI hat. Thanks, Gary, very much for setting this presentation up. What we are trying to do with this plenary is to give you a sense of what we did and why we did. And so my job today is to talk a little bit about methodology, which is something I love doing. So let's see where we go with this. So why and how we did what we did. So Gary's told you what the project is. We said that the project was all about pushing the boundaries of existing research on digital religion. It was all about trying to understand what cyber Islamic environments actually are, how do Muslims and others interact and work within them, and what are then the impacts of all these CIEs on our everyday analog lives. Now, sometimes I get told off and say, oh, don't say analog, these are real lives. But I think these are now completely enmeshed. Analog, digital, both are real. So I was I'm a bit younger than Gary, so I've always sort of grown up with technology. It was sort of ubiquitous in my life. I have used floppy disks, though. My first presentations were on floppy disk. And I also, when I became Muslim, aged 17 or 18, we didn't have digital technologies, but I found you could access English language Islamic stuff on those old style video cassettes. So I knew a place in Bombay where I grew up where I could get those, and I had to make the whole trek, right, to the train station, get onto a train, and then go and walk again, and then find those. I lived in a suburb. I mean, now I find all of those lectures on YouTube, and I'm like, ah. Anyway, so that's what we wanted to do, and I'm going to talk about how we did this. So the first really crucial concept to our work was lived religion. There are people in this room who know a lot more about lived religion, than I do, but it's about understanding. It's well theorized now, but not necessarily in the context of Islam and Muslim lives. A lot of research coming out of America, the names have gone, but really key scholars who I cite all the time and whose names I've forgotten, who talk about studying religion not necessarily through its institutions, so not necessarily through scriptures, to places of worship, through rules and regulations, but through the implications that religion has on everyday life. So, how do women negotiate gender norms in Islam? How do men negotiate gender norms in Islam? Why does the Muslims community leader or faith leader dress up in Islamic garb in one environment, and in another he might be in a three-piece suit? What are those messages that we try to send out to people around us as we negotiate our Muslim lives in pluralist contexts? But then also when I say Muslim lives, that can go from, I won't use, I use a little, so how do we, our Muslimness might entail a form of worship where Islam is the be-all and front-all of our lives, where every single decision we make is, through an Islamic lens. Or it might be people for whom Islam is definitely part of their identity, but nominally so. So we've really got to look at a complexity of positionalities, of identities, the impact of ethnicities on Islam. And so that was, I like this colorful image. It's not, it shows some of the diversity, and what it also shows crucially is not just color, but movement. Because these identities, our Islamic practice is in a state of flux as we respond to stimuli around us. And what we are interested in are the stimuli posed by digital contexts. Now, I'm quite cheeky, right? I didn't really want to think too much. So what I did is I asked Copilot, which is one of our AI LLMs, to draw me an image of living Islam online, right? So I didn't want to do any work. So AI generated this image for me. And I thought it was quite cool because it shows lots of Muslim people. Well, they are Muslim because of the clothes they are wearing. Generally, I don't think ethnicity or anything of that sort is quite apparent. And they're doing lots of Islamic stuff. And I think all the imagery sort of hovering around is meant to indicate the Islam online. So that was my question, living Islam online. I was a little dissatisfied with this image. It seems to indicate that all Muslims do is sort of pray. There's a woman at the back who's there are a few women who are doing things on laptops, and a man, doing something on a phone and on a laptop, but it seems to indicate sort of devotion. So I was I'm like, that's not what Muslims do online. We do loads of different things. So I decided to ask AI another question, but this question was still, okay, can you put some diversity in for me? So now we've got like different kinds of Muslims. So thinking about living Islam here, perhaps something that is some of the architecture that's a bit Iranian. The minars kind of weirdly look like a mix of Turkish and I don't know. But there's a mismatch here. But what you're also beginning to see is some more, this man here is possibly working because he's in a suit and a tie. I don't know. But we're beginning to see now some diversity in how AI portrays Muslims online. And then I changed my question, right? I changed my question from, remember, living Islam online to how do Muslims live online? And AI seems to have recognized that nuanced difference between Islam and Muslims, because now, yes, there's a bit of worship there, but what there also is here, there's a bit of Instagram, Facebook, there's social media in there, there's digital networking in there, there's a heart there indicating the relationships that Muslims must be forming online and the matrimonial websites. I met my husband online, by the way. So we like to tell all the youngsters, we did online dating when it wasn't even a thing. But this is what most cyber Islamic environments are. The last time we presented our work, somebody said to us, but we presented some stats, and he said, and the stats seemed to indicate that Muslims weren't really seeking religious advice online. And we said, then your whole thesis of cyber Islamic environments is a bit flawed, because if they're not seeking religious, only 40% of the time they're seeking religious advice, then what's the point of all of this? But the point of all of this is they're doing all sorts of things. They're buying food, they're doing clothes shopping, fashion, everything, holiday planning. that happens online. And that is the entirety of what we are interested in. The three themes of the project, I think I went a bit mad. AI and Copilot at this point, but I wanted to see what it would say about the three project themes, and I was quite interested to see, this is quite a nice image here. There is diversity of Muslims, different ethnicities, different clothes, Islamic garments, some Arabs and Phobes over there, but lots of people who are from other ethnicities. I was really excited because we put women in positions of authority. And but I think it's simply misunderstood. Authority and gender are in my question, so I just sort of clubbed that together. But there is protest, and there is different. And what this image does for me is show the complexity of positionalities that are possible. So underpinning all our work was a lived religion theoretical perspective. AI actually didn't form part of our work, so this is me cheating, but it is part of future work, hopefully, that we plan. And I think it is imperative that we go beyond and engage with these digital technologies on our own terms. I think there's an ethical imperative that we do that, and so we hope we can inspire you. Am I doing the time? Oh, good. In terms of our methods, I think Gary already put this up, to co-produce methodologies, and co-production is in caps for a reason, to develop a granulated analysis of online activities, and we ran focus group discussions for that. Khadija, she led us through those. Because what it was, we didn't want to impose our lens and our worldviews on the wider population. We wanted to get insights. Now, it isn't possible, full disclosure, to completely co-produce a research project, but we did try our best. Khadija went out, she ran 5 focus group discussions, virtually, in person, and her ideas, the findings that she generated from those focus group discussions, together with the literature, together with our expertise, informed all the other methods we ran. We identified and cataloged significant cyber-Islamic environments, and Gary has also already showed you some of the complexity, and Laura over here will take you through, how we did that and why. And then the everyday lived experiences, we used a variety of methods. I've already mentioned the focus group discussions. Gary's talked about the survey. Alamgir will be talking a little bit about the survey today. And then there are some findings that Dan will share with you tomorrow. Interviews, very briefly, I'll talk about, and then participant diaries. Now, it was important to have this. Some people, sometimes it might come across as too many methods, but if we are to explore the complexity of life, we need a variety of methods, because life is messy from a feminist epistemological perspective. Positionality, who were we in this team? I think it's really important. Me with my Coventry Ring Road hat, Gary with his Wales hat. We brought different perspectives, not just on, in terms of our multidisciplinarity, because, a sociologist, an anthropologist, a consumer behavior scientist. We brought in different expertise. Frederick, who's not here but will be there tomorrow, is a political scientist. We brought in different perspectives from our disciplinary expertise, but then we also brought in differing perspectives based on who we were. We are England, Wales, Scotland. We're different ethnicities. We've got different faith backgrounds. At some point, we're going to think about a methodological piece around how, our different identities affected what we produced. Now, I want to talk a little bit about ethics, because I think ethics is really important in all of this work. So there were all sorts of, stages, the different stages of the project. We've had to think about ethical practice conceptually, who do we include in the team and why? We took a very active decision to avoid some of the preventing violent extremism narrative. Conceptually, from an ethical perspective, at the conceptual stage, that was really important to us. Ethics comes in at implementation, and later on when we do impact, which I'll mention at the end, we want this work to be accessible to the communities that helped us produce it. And so that is an ethical stance there. Ethics was complicated because, there are cross-project considerations, different sort of societal positionalities, what is the take, suspicion of digital technologies, but also fears of misinformation. Remember, Provost Harvard, the cathedral, and the hate comments we received by snail mail. It's much, it's better in the real context. How do we challenge local versus national? Different ethical considerations across each of our methods that we will talk about in our book. But across all of this, what my concern was, we wanted to achieve a rigorous and original research narrative. But how do we do this? Is rigor and originality enough? Do we need to think about concepts of fairness and being just? Can we be neutral, or do we take sides? I mean, these are things we're still thinking about. Do we need to issue a corrective, when it comes to stereotypes of Islam and Muslims? And I don't know. We continue to think of this, and I think as future scholars pick up the baton, from us, you're going to have to think about all of this. So moving from ethics to my last bit, fabulous. I don't have the time to give you a lot of analysis, and that was not the intention behind my presentation. I wanted to talk about how complicated the methods were, and the difficulties in contacting people and organizing staff, but I got carried away with Copilot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you just a few reflections, just tasters into what people said during interviews, right? Because nobody else is going to cover this bit. We ran about 14 interviews, 7 individuals, these were influencer type people, so famous names, and 7 organizations to understand organizational perspectives. These are draft findings, so please do not cite. They're still being fine-tuned. And they're not even findings yet, they're just provocations. Now, the first thing that came to my mind, thinking about the complexity of cyber-Islamic environments, was who are you online? Previous research shows that people are more likely to say stuff online because they think they are protected by barriers of anonymity, untraceability. It's a big ethical debate I've had in previous work. But then technology also creates you into something. This is from Fatima Barakatullah. She starts with Bismillah. So there's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and she's positioning herself in a particular way. She says, my name is Fatima, and usually in my social media profiles, I write that I'm an author, an Islamic scholar, or an Islamic law scholar, and a podcast host. But if you Google me, I'll come up as a writer, and I can't seem to be able to change that. Now, this is sort of okay. She is an author. Google says she's a writer. She could be other things. Google has decided. I mean, you can change that. You go into your thing, and like Google decided the only thing I was a convert to Islam. I'm like, no, I'm a professor as well. And I am this, that, and the other. So you can change it. But the first thing was, who are you online? In our other project that we're not meant to talk about that looks at digital Islam across Europe, Anna here uncovered, there was somebody she interviewed who was a scholar, and we enjoyed interviewing him. Then a few years later, we noticed there are news articles about him where somebody has made allegations of sexual abuse against him. Now, Google has kept that trail even though they are allegations. Think about ethics here. Who are you on Google? Authority. Now, this was what Abdurrahman Rahim Green told us this. So there's a big thing here, right? Do you go online with your scholarship if you are a sheikh or an alim or an alima or a sheikha? Or do you just stay in your mosque and teach people around you? And he said, and I'm going to quote him, and there are people, obviously, who have seriously deep levels of knowledge, traditional Islamic knowledge, and they might as well literally live in a box. So he's quite angry here. They might as well live in a hole in the ground when it comes to affecting anybody. And the only people they affect, and I'm sorry to say, because it's a conscious choice, it's like if you're not sitting at my feet studying this book, you're basically a waste of time. And he says this is a whole level of arrogance, and he says it's like your duty as a person of knowledge to convey this knowledge. Because when you convey, if you don't, you're not honoring the knowledge. That's Abdurrahman Green. So if you're not online, but that's the, again, these are the debates that cyber Islamic environments stir up. There are scholars who would much rather stick to traditional methods, and there is merit and virtue in that. But there are others who share things online. Moving, and I'm not going to comment on this. This is from Abdul Azim, who is, who you know very well, who is chair of the Muslim Council of Wales, and who works at Cardiff University. And he's talking about knowledge flows and how digital technologies have changed how knowledge flows. The traditional knowledge flow, say in this country, South Asia, because 60% of Muslims in this country are of South Asian heritage, to here. So the traditional flow of knowledge from South Asia to here, or at some point from Middle East to here, that is dissipating. Not necessarily solely because of the digital, but it's enabled by the digital. Other interviewees are talking about Anglophone Islam and flows between the Americas, the English-speaking world, but also flows from Europe and European context to Britain, because we are seen as producing more knowledge. That was it really from me. I think what our project has done is that it has thrown up loads of questions for us to think about within this team. But when this data is made available and these findings are made available for you to pick up the baton and run with as well. So thank you very much for listening. I will say, though I did promise, in terms of impact and taking this back into communities, we've got events planned in Edinburgh at the Parliament in April. May, hopefully in Cardiff, it's dinner and dissemination, so we'll get a good meal. We are planning something at the East London Mosque and an event and methodology here in Coventry, hopefully in June. So please follow our website or Twitter, and you'll get all of that information as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you. So continuing from where Saria left, with the overarching theme of live religion. So putting together a methodology which captures how Muslims are, their experiences and existence within an online sphere. And within my presentation, I'm discussing two methodologies, the online survey and the digital diaries. So I'll split the presentation in between the two. Now, with the online survey, in investigating the lives of Muslims, you're not restricted, as Saria said, to the so-called Muslimness of what is a Muslim and capturing a survey which targets specific religious or manifestations of their Muslim identity. Rather, you have to realize they're a human being like any other human being here in the UK. They're a consumer, they're a family member, they're someone who's studying, who's working, who's using the internet for search. So with our survey, in order to capture this, we create an extensive survey which captures all sorts of online behavior. At the same time, within our sample group, we've split the sample between Muslims and the national representative, i.e. those who aren't Muslims. So that acts as a control group. So what happens then is you're able to capture some mundane behavior of how someone connects to the internet, and then you're able to connect, okay, within the Muslim sample, we find Muslims are connected to the internet with these devices, whereas the national representative is connected in this manner. And all of a sudden, from that difference, you're able to find differences from a regular behavior. So within my presentation, I'm going to break down the actual survey itself, the type of questions we asked, and then the other things related to methodology. So the survey itself, as I said, extensive survey, over 50 questions, broken down into 4 key sections. Number 1, general internet usage, digital religion experience, digital consumer experience, and relationships and community. Within this, we use a variety of types of survey questions, Likert scales, multiple choice, really capturing attitudes, behaviors, really able to map out the types of interaction, behaviors, and attitudes that exist online. So just to break down each section, so with general internet usage, asking a variety of types of questions. We asked the types of devices they use, the way they've accessed the internet, the frequency of use. You might think frequency of use is such a basic thing of how often they use, without you correlate with the types of devices they use, and then you compare the Muslim sample with the non-Muslim sample, and you do find interesting findings, which my colleague Dan will discuss tomorrow. Also, we discussed the types of platforms, and you do find Muslims tend to use certain types of platforms compared to the general general non-Muslim population. And digital behaviors and attitudes. We captured many things related to attitude using consumer scales. So those of you who aren't familiar with consumer studies, and I think this is just as a general note, I think social sciences and consumer sciences really do, when it comes to study of Muslims, they really should communicate more. Because both are extensively studying Muslims, but I find there's no bridge. So when I worked in this project, I experienced a bridge. Because I remember during my PhD Bible, for example, just on a side note, I discussed about capturing religious influence on behavior. And my Bible person asked, the examiner, why didn't you cite papers from sociology? And I was like, I wasn't sure I was supposed to. I thought I just stick to marketing. But so one of the things we should really collaborate, and this really captures that. So on that topic of religious experiences, we used religious commitment scale to capture intent in behavior. And I found because defining religion and then using that as a indicator of behavior and attitude is very difficult. I think the one scale that kind of works with all types of studies is religious commitment, and that has a significant ability to predict behavior and so forth. So with this, we try to gauge engagement with certain platforms, seeking information, online versus offline practices. Because one of the things you find, and also when I discuss the diaries, is the fluid nature of our religiosity between offline and online. And the survey really captures that, but when we connect that with the other methodologies, we really put a full picture together. Then you have relationships and community, and this is to do with friendships, connecting with family, and also relationships for marital relationships. So we really captured trust in spaces. How likely are you to trust somebody online and become good friends with them? How many of your friends are friends of yours from initiating from online? How often do you operate online anonymous? How much do you show your identity? And then you find a stark contrast between the Muslim sample and the non-Muslim sample as a result. And also digital consumer experience. Within this, I did ask specific faith-based shopping experiences, just to understand, okay, how much of your online purchasing behavior is influenced by your faith. And you find there is a significant influence that Muslims do pay attention and consideration to religious values when it comes to their consumption shopping behavior. So, as I mentioned, alluded to the sample already, we had response of over 2,000, 50-50 between Muslims and national representatives. What's interesting with the non-Muslim sample, when we looked further, obviously we just said those who aren't Muslim, but when you break that sample down, 50% of that is non-religion, and the other 50% are people who are not Muslim but affiliated to a particular religion, which has shown a growing demographic of, within the UK, that outside of the Muslim sphere, and even maybe even other South Asian religions, predominantly Christian, that the non-religion is growing and Christianity is decreasing as a demographic. But when I also looked up further as a contrast between the Muslim sample and the non-Muslim, even with that split, there's not really much difference. The main difference is with the Muslim sample itself. We split it between genders 50-50, and we tried to really represent all the age demographics. Can't assume that people under 35 are the only ones who use the internet. Really, the online internet experience, especially post-COVID, where there was mass adoption of using technology, you find that throughout all aging groups that the internet is used, and my colleague Dan tomorrow will also elaborate on this. This was conducted in August 2023, and we used Savanta, which have an excellent survey tool, and they put the respondent for us. Certain ethical considerations, boring stuff. Now, the benefits and challenges of surveying two distinct samples. So I've kind of alluded to it. So the benefits are comparative analysis between Muslim and general population, unique insights into Muslim digital experience, and it enables us to target questions specific to Muslim experiences in the backdrop of their broader experience. But the challenge of that is you are not constructing two separate surveys. It is a single survey. So within that single survey, we had to ensure the language used was non-biased and that regardless of your background, you're able to answer those questions. But at the same time, at certain times, you do want to ask specific questions to the Muslim respondents about their faith and their experience online. So with Savanta, we had to put together a mechanism where if someone opts a Muslim, they would receive certain additional questions on their survey, and those who aren't Muslim, they wouldn't have those questions appear on the survey. So that way, we had certain questions which were for the Muslim sample only, and whereas the rest of the survey was for everybody. But even constructing a survey for all samples, for this large mixed sample was challenging, but we got there in the end. Oops, I pressed stop by mistake. And contribution to research methodology, it was a large scale focus on religion behavior, a very advanced methodological rigor as part of our overall mixed methods approach, and implications for research. But I need to move on to our next one, which is participant digital diaries. And this is where what Sari discussed about lived religion really takes hold. Because of all the qualitative approaches to capturing data, where it might be an interview or a focus group, you're capturing someone's self-report in the moment, which may be tailored, might capture their moment in time. But when you have a diary now, which is following participants over a 30-day period, whilst they're living their daily lives and reflecting, you're getting amazing kind of qualitative responses. And we're really rich. So the research context, first ever study exploring social and digital activities on lived experience of diverse Muslim communities in Britain. So as I mentioned, participants, we had them participate for 30 days. We used an app called Indemo, which I'll discuss further. This involved a daily reflection, where they were asked the same question, which they had to reflect on every day. Participants were given £50, which they enjoyed. £50 voucher, sorry. And there was regular engagement. So for you to hit the benchmark of completion of participation, you had to complete at least 80% of that 30-day period. Many people dropped out. So as I mentioned, research design is qualitative data, longitudinal tracking changes over time, uncovering patterns, attitudes, behaviors in digital spaces. Participant selection. So the interesting thing about participation selection, and this is I was going to discuss later in the slide, but with the challenges of recruitment is you put together the recruitment form, people sign up, that's one step. Second step is then the people have to complete consent, that's another step. Another step was installing the app onto your phone, orientation, and the next step was participating for 30 days. And each step there was a drop-off. So, and even with the people who you could install the app and started, many of those dropped off. So you find that this commitment of 30 days is quite challenging, but at the same time, it's a case of, do I want to hit my numbers or do I want qualitative data that I can use? So I chose quality over quantity, but it would have been nice to have qualitative numbers overall though. Now I just want to quickly talk about research tools. So traditionally, diary studies in social science research has been either a manual process, people either providing diary entries through maybe video diaries or written entries, manually shared, or even in recent years, social scientists have created their own apps to try and capture that. But within UX research, user experience research within consumer studies, B2B, people trying to capture how consumers are using their products, these products exist. So I've adopted Indemo as a UX research tool for our social research, which allows us to use multimodal data collection, text, audio, video, images. And this is a sample. This isn't from our project. So I'm not breaking any ethical things here. Here, as you can see, I can manage respondents. This is a kind of the default entries that people are sharing. There's a big dashboard that I can follow. I can go to individual respondents, see how they're doing. Then I can look at the individual tasks and how that's performing, and just manage a project. It's an excellent tool, but we didn't get it for free, by the way. This is a premium tool from our project budget. So yeah. So very quickly, because my time's coming to an end, this is the main question that was asked to all participants as a reflection. Thinking about how you've used digital spaces today, reflect on your digital experience and how it's impacted your life as a Muslim. And these are prompts that really kind of help people hone their reflection. One of the key challenges I found with diaries is asking people to do written reflections. It doesn't work. Most of us, if we're asked to reflect verbally, we can all reflect. Humans reflect. We're reflective beings. But not everybody is capable of reflecting in written form. So one early stage of the project, when I realized this, I made it mandatory that it was only audio or video only. And then me as a researcher, then if you just talk about, I did this today, I went on this, my child was crying, give them a phone, they shut up. From that, I'm capturing so much rich data from a mundane thing. But because they expressed it verbally and with their emotions and their attitudes and some context, I'm able to take from that. But if they say, I fed my child and I give it written, you can't really take much from it. So that's one of the key changes I made. But at the same time, I added, because this software allows additional tasks, I asked optional questions that were very specific, just to help people understand. Because when you give a general question, they don't know where to focus. So I asked about online experience in relationships, online experience in mental health, daily information search, and digital activism. This diary took place right at the beginning of the Gaza conflict. So all of a sudden, previously I didn't think mental health and digital activism would get many responses, but because of the ongoing conflict, we found that mental health and digital activism became a strong factor. People were reporting how the mental health was being affected by the images and videos that they've seen online, and then also the need for them to do something. I feel hopeless, let me do something, let me post something online, let me like this, let me participate in this. They felt they had to do something. So you found that digital activism all of a sudden became a prominent feature. Data management, skip all this, ethical considerations, and then challenges. So I mentioned already challenges related to registrants, already described that. I also had, when I put the Microsoft Forms, I had spam box, it was ridiculous. My inbox was flooded with John Davis and Diana saying, can I participate? I'm like, what's going on here? And then as I realized it's all bots. So I had to then understand that I had to change the whole screening process. I had to make real key changes. So these are considerations to make our recruitment process more robust with quality studies in an online age. And this thing. So let me just, questions. Yes, I mentioned that. Enhanced boarding. Oh yes, also I found with long-term qualitative studies, you have to really push the onboarding process as much as possible. My challenge was because with working in academia, you're trying to get certain things approved, and your time schedule is to do with the legalities of the university approving the software usage, and then you're having, it was a bit of a thing. So when I only had literally 7 days to do onboarding, ideally I would have wanted longer. And then one thing you realize is digital diaries provide unique insights that survey can't alone. So when I combine the diaries of the survey, it's phenomenal the way we've captured Muslim behavior online. And this stuff. So I just going to quickly note that as a result of these two methodologies, we've then produced the Gaza online survey, which is still ongoing. But this one is an addendum to the existing survey and also highlights the key points of digital activism and mental health that was shared on the diaries, and we're capturing all that within the new survey, which will really help give us insight of a conflict situation, but how Muslims experience that within online. So that hopefully that comes, and that is the conclusion of these last two surveys. Before I pass it to my colleague Laura.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura. You'll have probably been getting all the emails from me. So I'm a postdoc researcher, and today I'm going to focus on the archive, the Digital British Islam Archive, which Gary mentioned earlier. So first, just to give you a brief overview of what the archive is, focusing then on how we have used the archiving as a research method, and particularly some of the methodological challenges around that. And then kind of describing the archive as a research output as well, and basically giving you a demonstration of how you can use that, that information we've captured as well. So firstly, what is the archive? I've got a screenshot of it here from the Archive It website. And it's essentially, we've chosen to use it as a collection of websites. We didn't capture social media, and Gary started to kind of explain some of the reasons behind that earlier. But I'll go into that a bit more in a later slide. So it's a selection of websites. It's available via Archive It, which is part of the Internet Archive, and you can access it on either of these two links via Archive It itself or through our project website, digitalbritishislam.com. And here is basically some categories. We've broken down the collection of websites into different categories. They're called collections on Archive It. And it's quite a broad spectrum. We're looking at kind of the more explicitly religious things, but also lifestyle and other things. And again, I'll go into these a bit more later on. But firstly, I want to talk about why is it important to archive. And essentially, a big reason for our project to do this is because of the ethereal and rapidly changing nature of digital content. Things go up and they disappear all the time. And you might have heard of this idea of the internet white whale, which is essentially where you come across a post or an article or a video, and you try and find it 6 months, a year later, and you just, no matter how hard you try, you can't find this post that you were looking for. And it's just kind of been sucked into the mass of information that's out there, or it may have been taken down or changed. And we've actually found that with some of the websites we have archived at the beginning of the project, when we try and archive them again later on, you can see if you go on the archive itself, they've been taken down and they're no longer there. So that's why we feel it's really important to capture these. And our archive provides a kind of snapshot of what's going on digitally online for Muslims, particularly in the UK, between 2022 and 2025, which is the project period. So thinking now about some of the methodological challenges and around archiving, and I think it's really nicely summed up by this quote. And essentially, it's just the vastness of the internet poses quite a challenge when it comes to archiving in terms of deciding what you want to include in an archive, but also just analysing that mass of data and the kind of multimedia nature of that as well. So the first challenge then around defining our parameters, like I said, even in a sort of defined-ish field that we were looking at of British Islam online, it's impossible to kind of capture everything. As we talked about earlier, Muslims engage with a variety of websites online. They may be things which are more explicitly Islamic, but also general mainstream things. They may be websites focused on the UK or kind of more with a global audience. So the possibilities for what we could capture were endless, but we only had a specific data set, data allowance with archiving. And also, I think I draw here upon Candia's idea around arbitrary locations. And he argues that kind of previously, in terms of ethnographic research, it was seen as, you look at a very specific bounded place for a specific time, and that gives you a snapshot of the wider picture. Whereas more recently, he says that kind of ethnography has been kind of broadened, kind of have to kind of look outwards and look at everything. Whereas I think there's a benefit in choosing a kind of specific delineated example, and it allows you to theorize much more broadly using a case study. So the parameters we decided on then, as I mentioned, we focus on websites and not social media. And largely that was to avoid any ethical issues around sort of dredging up people's past social media posts. And we've seen this has been used to damage people's reputation. One example of that is the former NUS president, Shaima Dalali. She had Twitter posts, I think it was, were brought up from sort of 10 years before she got that post, and essentially she was sacked because of those comments she made. So we wanted to avoid the issues around that. So we focused on websites between 2022 and 25. We looked at websites which were UK based or whose founders were kind of in the UK, or which had a kind of, we're looking largely at a UK audience, and also websites which were led by Muslims or Islamic-ish in focus. Again, to kind of focus down on our project, focus on Muslims in the UK. We largely excluded video and audio files because of data that took up a lot of data. So that is one thing that's not so much in the archive itself, but we've obviously looked at that through other methods in the project. And as I mentioned earlier, we split the archive into different categories. I'll go back to that slide now. And we came at this with these through a few different ways. We kind of discussed as a team what we felt was important. We wanted to focus on our project themes of religious authority, gender, and political agency. And again, you'll see those represented here in different ways. And also we drew on some of the feedback we got from focus groups in terms of the particular websites people were saying they turned to that were important for them. So the next challenge that kind of comes up is around how do we analyse this huge amount of data that we've got, but also how do we draw real-world conclusions from digital sources? One of the research questions of our project is around looking at the impact of these online environments on everyday Muslim lives. But we also know that when you look at a website, it is a presentation of a particular organisation or an individual, and it doesn't tell you everything that's there. And although kind of Baudrillard talks about this idea of hyperreality and simulacra, and that increasingly things are kind of being, reality is kind of being constructed virtually, which we obviously see that does happen. And within our archive, we've seen that websites are used to convey reputability of an organisation or even to kind of prove they exist sometimes. But they also can obscure what's happening in the real world, whether intentionally or not. And we can draw on Goffman here, who talks about kind of French stage backstage and the idea that, when a person or kind of presents themselves to others, they are presenting a particular version of themselves, and you don't kind of see everything. And I think when you look at a sort of digital front stage, it's even more perhaps removed from the whole reality, the whole picture of what's going on. And And so this poses as a challenge. And an example I'm going to bring here is this mosque you can see, which is Woki Mosque or Shah Jahan Mosque that you might recognise. And I noticed when you go on their website, which is an archive, you'll see that all the pictures on their website are of this this building, which is a very historic and beautiful building. It is quite small, but you would think perhaps that this is all that's there. But if you go and visit, which I did a few years ago, there's so much more to the mosque. There's a whole complex of different buildings, a women's space, a madrasa space, a sort of educational building, and even a playground on the site. And they're things you don't get at all from just looking at the website. So I think the kind of lesson for us is that we need to combine this web data with a more wider ethnographic observation of what's going on, as well as our other methods in the project, which is really an advantage of this project in terms of combining with the diaries, with the surveys, the focus groups, and the interviews that we have captured. So one of the other ways we can kind of overcome the challenge of analysis is through data visualizations. These are based more specifically on the web data. So on the left, you can see a word cloud. This one's from the MCB website, which kind of shows the key and the most popular words that come up on the text of those sites. And on the right, there's a network analysis, which shows, gives a breakdown of the links that go out of the website you captured. You can see common websites that are shared, links that are shared between websites, and also you can start to look at transnational links in terms of the domains that different websites are linking to. So finally, looking at how you can use the archive yourself, and hopefully this can work. I just want to give a brief demo of the archive. So this is on the archivic website. It starts with a description of the project, the overview. But then if you go down, you'll find all the categories, the collections that I mentioned earlier listed. I'm going to click on one of these and just talk you through and show that it comes up. So this is a charities collection. And if I click on Charity Week, you'll find a calendar. This shows you, there we go. So you can see we've captured it 3 times. I'll go back to 2023 first. And they're all displayed by the Wayback Machine, if you're familiar with that. Yeah, so you'll see this is the capture of the Charity Week website from 2023. Oops, sorry. And just to have an overview of how that looks. And if I go back, go on to 2024 example, and you'll see that the website's changed, it's different, and that makes sense because Charity Week is an annual event, so it's quite likely that they've changed this at least annually. Yeah, so thank you for listening, and I think it's time to the questions now.
On behalf of all the audience, to all our presenters, thank you so much for setting us in good stead, I think, for the rest of the conference. If I can invite all the presenters to come up, we'll commence with our Q&A.